Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our pre-recorded appointments, the splices. And today we have Mario, our friend at Amazon. Okay, Mario, welcome, welcome. Oh yeah,
Thank
there is
you.
also Sebastiano.
Ciao.
Ciao, Sebastiano.
Ciao, Seba.
Mario is the guest
Ciao
star.
Mario.
Come on, Mario, how you doing?
Hey guys, thank you very much for having me. Super excited to be here. I'm doing very well, super good. And yeah, the guy from Amazon. So maybe
Okay.
I'll spend a
So
couple.
sorry for the poor introduction because
That's
it sounds
fine. That
so
I'm
gay, but
technically a
just
guy from Amazon, so you're totally right. So I'll spend a couple seconds just explaining a little bit better what I do and why I'm here talking about Android with you guys. So first of all, good friend with both Sebastiano and Ivan. Even though we're all in different places, we all every once in a while we get together. But speaking about myself, I'm actually based out of London. And I am leading the developer evangelism team for the Amazon App Store team. So my team is actually has a much longer name, a much more complicated name, which is Content and App Partner Engagement, which is a mouthful, but it was formerly known as the App Store team. So basically, what I do is I work with a team of developer advocates and developer relations, and we engage with the broader community of developers and introduce all the Amazon-related technologies. In particular, we focus on the Amazon Fire devices, so Amazon Fire tablets and Fire TV, which is actually one of the big topics of today's episode.
Yeah, we're not talking about tablets today. Who cares about tablets anyway?
Tablets,
oh,
tablets, tablets.
uh, okay, so I think you're in a good position to tell us something that I find sometimes it's hard to communicate to someone that is thinking about maybe porting their product to a TV environment, which is it's not always a good fit. Like there are I think there are cases that you've seen where some kinds of apps, some kind of products work much better than others. So do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I think the fact that a lot of these devices are called TV devices is not just by chance, right? Like there are a series of contents that makes more sense than others, and compared to tablets and to phones, the interaction is also different. So that actually matters quite a lot in terms of the content that makes sense on streaming media players. I think that's the official definition. And so again, it's not a surprise that the I would say the largest amount of consumption on streaming media players is on streaming content. So on media and entertainment applications, those are the ones that are capturing most of the attention from the public. At the same time, it's interesting because. I mean, if we're talking about devices like Fire TV, but even Android TV, we're talking about full-fledged Android devices. So they can technically run any kind of application. So a lot of developers are actually starting to introduce new type of content on the big screen as well. Like we're seeing a lot of fitness application becoming very popular on Fire TV in particular. I would say over the last couple of years because of the pandemic, a lot of this content became super popular. And then we've seen a variety of other things. We see games, of course, is becoming more and more popular with all the game streaming services as well, but also with local games that you can run on these devices. And then there is, I would say, a miscellanea of other type of apps. There is things like news is becoming popular, which can be video content, but sometimes it's even written content. It can be just audio or radio. That's popular as well. Music, of course, super popular. And then you have like dashboard applications, so like weather applications. And then you have like some of the ones that I found quite funny, but sometimes they help set the mood. Like there is the fireplace application that you set up on Christmas time. Those are surprisingly popular as well.
Are those
So yeah, but
generally
yeah,
streaming the fire, or is the fire pre-recorded?
yeah, me too. It is. You have a Fire on Fire TV. No, it is of course, like most of those end up they're technically media streaming applications, but they're kind of funny, and some of those are actually quite elaborated even in terms of the UX. So well done to these developers, very creative. But yeah, odd.
You were talking about the.
I have a question. Sorry,
Sorry, I
please.
just wanted to say something stupid, as I usually do. That when you were talking about fitness apps on TV, and then you talked about video games, and my mind immediately went to the Ring Fit Adventure game on the Nintendo Switch, which is kind of like those two things smashed together. It's like it's a game, but it's also tricking you into fitness.
Yeah, exactly. So it's I think like a lot of these apps, like the Peloton app, for example, has added like gamification into fitness, and yeah, it's a cool idea, and TV is a target for this type of content.
It is, especially for someone like me that has glasses, and when you exercise, you need a big screen because you don't have the glasses on. Sorry, Ivan,
but that's
go ahead.
actually interesting because you mentioned that there are a lot of fitness apps, and that's actually interesting for me because I usually worked on fitness apps on the phone, and then they cast on the TV, and it's that kind of experience. It's never starting on the TV, it's like more like going to the TV after that you find the workout, or whatever the content it is, like the training, whatever, and then you cast it on the. So you also have like a basic player, but you end up with a very basic player, or you need to actually work a lot to have something fancy on the TV if you want to cast. Probably on that side, you will probably get more advantages to build an app for the TV.
Yeah.
Now, I see the advantage.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think both cases, they have their own different use cases. I think the advantage of having a full-fledged Android device available to you is that you can build a full-blown application. While maybe if you're building a cast-based application, you're maybe slightly more limited in the fact that you have to depend on the phone for controls. There are also other new, I would say, interaction patterns which are interesting. Like for example, the fact that when it comes to TV, we at Amazon, for example, we're starting to introduce voice as another way to control your device. And if you have a way to have voice interact with a native application, like we're doing for a lot of media streaming application, it changes the way that you can interact with the app. You don't even have to touch a remote anymore. You can just say do this or do that, and the app will react accordingly. So I think the big advantage is having this Android layer that we can, as Android developers, we can then leverage and build more like richer applications than maybe a type of application you can build using Cast.
And given we have talked about, we have mentioned Cast, I think it's fairly important for people to understand the difference between a platform such as Cast and a platform like a full fat Android platform, or even not Android, but in general, like a streaming device, as you mentioned. Like, what is, in terms of user experience and in terms of high level concept, the difference between the two things?
Yeah, of course. So I think the major difference is what we just mentioned. The fact that on one side you have a platform which might be like, for example, Chromecast, which is based on Chrome OS, even though there is a small Android layer on top. But the core concept is that there is a an application that runs on a Chrome layer. And then everything is actually controlled by the phone. So you have to literally cast content to the Chrome OS based device. And your phone is your source of control for the interaction that you have on Cast. And the difference with other devices like Fire TV, Fire TV is basically an Android AOSP based application device, which runs OS, which is based again on top of Android, and so it's a full-fledged Android device. The only difference is that it's a dongle which doesn't have a screen, and it connects through HDMI.
It's a phone
to
without a screen.
It's a phone without a screen by all means and purposes. It has like the same components that you would find in a phone, which for developers like us is a big advantage. And also the difference is that most of these devices, they come with the remote control, and you can use the remote to control your application. But the way that Android developers can build their apps is fairly similar to how you would build an application for a phone. You have to adopt specific UX patterns and some caveat in terms of what APIs on services are you using in your application.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the old school Chromecast, because the new Chromecast is more like Fire TV than, because I mean, we know Google, they like to call the same name 5 different things that are mildly or completely unrelated to each other. But the new Chromecast is essentially the same as a Fire TV, but obviously it doesn't run Fire OS. It runs like a Google's Android TV. Well, actually, it runs Google TV because we're talking about Google. And again, Google TV used to be it used to be the first, I think it was the first Android-based TV platform, right? It was like a lifetime ago at this point. Then they morphed that into Android TV, and then now Chromecast has been overtaken, and Android TV as well have been overtaken by Google TV, which is, if I understand correctly, like the equivalent of the Pixel experience for Android, something like that.
That is my understanding as well. That is is an Android TV with basically a Google, I'm not saying facelift, but basically a Google experience on top of the standard Android TV that other manufacturers use. So yeah, it is in all sense. The good news for developers is that if you're building an application for Fire TV, there is a very high chance that it will run out of the box on Google TV and on Android TV, and vice versa. There's of course some caveats, and we can talk about it maybe a bit later in terms of like APIs and services and dependencies, but the core Android layer is the same between these devices.
Speaking of Android, which version of Android or is FireOS based on these days?
So the latest version of FireOS, which is FireOS 7, is on API level 28. So that would be Android 9
that's
Pie.
A lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot. That's usually, well, unfortunately, I work with things that are way older than that. So
I read today that they're thinking about deprecating Gingerbread somewhere. Then they're like, you're no longer be able to log into Gingerbread, which was interesting. Finally, you would say, okay, maybe it was about time.
Maybe one day, and you'll forgive me, Mario, but for this. But maybe one day the Amazon apps on Android will drop the gingerbread theming.
Well, I mean, UX is hard. Come on, it was actually one of the
fair comment. I think it's mostly like the colors are very similar. To be honest, Sebastiano, it's not. I would say it's totally fair that to see says the gingerbread theming. It is fairly similar.
No, I'm
colors and theming.
I mean like the base the app is completely reskinned from the gingerbread theme, but for example, you sometimes see the old progress dialogues that were like the gingerbread style, or when an activity is loading, you see the title bar, which we haven't seen since gingerbread. So that means that the base theme is based on that. I mean, there are reasons for that, but
because that's a retro vibe, Sebastian. You don't understand the retro vibe.
Yeah.
That's because that's the 80s. That thing is coming back. You know how it is,
It
right?
is. It's cyclical. It comes back. I think it's the cool that it shows the Android. The fact that it is actually Android underneath the skin.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that people recognize the UI patterns.
But
Yeah.
in terms, sorry, even just super quick question. In terms of developing for a Fire TV, for example, can you make kind of the same assumption that you can do with Android TV, which is you're going to be on the latest or second to latest version of Android, or do you have to code against with a minimum SDK that is lower than 28?
Yeah. So I mean, you can. The way that it works is that there is like the latest versions of Fire TV and Fire TV Stick are coming out on FireOS 7. However, there are a lot of devices out there which are still based on previous versions of FireOS. The good news is that FireOS doesn't have that many versions. It's not like Android that has a new version coming out every year. There are mainly, right now, I would say 3 versions that are to be supported, which are FireOS 5, 6, and 7. FireOS 5, which is now, of course, declining in terms of numbers because more and more the customers are getting the latest devices, is based on Lollipop. And then there is FireOS 6, which is based on Nougat.
Okay.
So these would be the 3 devices, the 3 versions of FireOS that you want to go back to. That means that you need to go as far back as API 22, which is the
22, not 21.
Yeah, it's 5.1. So
Okay.
it's API 22.
Okay, thank you. Ivan, all yours.
No, I was actually wondering about we were talking about the UX part. As a Android developer, I always work with a design team for an app. So that part is basically non-existent for me, right? I mean, even with the Code with Italians, I have a designer in the team that takes care of everything. But jokes aside, when I do things for myself, pet projects and side project, that kind of stuff, I have to do everything. Okay, so
Yeah.
so they are gonna probably be ugly, but the thing that it's clear when I use my let's say Android TV or like Fire TV actually, is that there is no touch. I mean,
Yes.
the whole UX is different,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there is no recycle view that I can fling and fancy stuff. So the whole experience is a bit simpler, but it's actually hard to plan, to design for me, because you have basically on your remote control you have like a cross, right? I mean, you
Yes.
can go left, right, so you can do the fanciest thing. So what will be your advice? I mean, there are actually limitations. So how would you help somebody like me, from a mindset point of view?
Of course. Yeah, so it's a great question. I think the main difference is, again, the fact that when you have to start planning the interface for TV, I think it's very useful to literally start from scratch, not think about the mobile version of your app, but really think about what is going to be the 10-foot experience versus the mobile experience. It's going to be radically different, right? Like your customers are going to be, again, 10 feet from the device. They're going to be probably chilling on their sofa. They'll be looking at a big probably 1080p or 4K display, but they will be far from it, and they will be using a remote. So that means that when you're building the basic components of the UI, it's better to start thinking about what are the key the components that work well with the remote control. So that means that, for example, when we're building buttons for mobile applications and we're creating the selector, that is going to identify all the different states of a button. So a button when it is pressed or when it is not pressed. As Android developers, we tend to say to think about two states, pressed and not pressed. And there is another state which is hovered, which in the touch context is basically never used because you just press on a button or you don't press on it. However, when you are in the context of a remote control, you're going probably to move across your interface between one item and the other, but you're not going to necessarily select that specific item. Think about when you're scrolling through a list of movies, for example, you might want to go from one to the other, but not necessarily click on it. And that's why, for example, the selector and the hover part of the selector is very important. Is like, what does that look like when you are moving from one item to the other? And the other thing that as mobile developers, we don't really spend a lot of time thinking about is the focus and the order in sequence of what items in the UI are follow one, like the one follow each other, basically. Because on a mobile device, you will probably flip from one button to the other. You don't have a clear sequence into the buttons that you're pressing on a specific activity. However, that is absolutely crucial when you're building an interface that is based on, like you said, based on the D-pad, based on the up, down, left, right, and click. Because you need to say, if I'm on this specific view, what is the next view that I'm going to click on? Yeah. And that becomes even more important when you're building dynamic UIs. Like, let's say that you're building again, a media streaming application. You might want to have, maybe a recycler view that contains multiple movies which are generated on demand, like at runtime. But you still need to build your application in a way that when the customer clicks the next button, there is a graceful transition between one view and the other. Yeah. So I think that's the main jump that if you're a mobile developer, you will probably need to do if you're moving into designing interfaces for TV, is think about what is the sequence and how you can build a graceful experience between moving through these components.
That's somewhat similar to what we are already used when using a desktop app anyway. When you press tab, the focus that you have, it's the same idea, but on a computer you use the tab to move to the next item, and it's the same reason why it's important. Just imagine using your computer without the mouse.
Yes.
And it's essentially the same.
And it is it is an interesting thing what happened recently with Fire TV, actually, for us, because we recently introduced Fire TV for Auto, which actually had us rethink this approach as well, because Fire TV Auto introduces touchscreen as well. And so what happens when you have built an application for the remote control, but all of a sudden your customers have to use touch? So it's kind of these two worlds colliding. You have a TV experience, but it needs to be touch enabled. So everything I said before applies very well here. You need to build a graceful touch experience that also blends well with a remote control based interface as well, because customers can use remote as well along with touch. So that was an interesting problem to solve, I would say, from explaining developers what they have to do.
But apart from that, that's the main difference, is just thinking in terms of the different UX you have in a car, right? The rest is kind of the same thing, where the kind of applications that you're likely to have in a car, in an infotainment system, are similar, if not exactly the same as the ones you would have in a living room.
Yes.
Well, maybe except the fitness ones, I guess.
Yeah, maybe not.
Run now!
Yeah, even games. I don't know if I mean, there is a lot of traffic in a lot of cities in the US, but I don't know if gaming
kids
on your dashboard is
kids. Just put them on the you have the ones in the headrest, right?
Exactly. So in particular, Fire TV Auto is designed for the headrest experience. So
Okay.
it's like an entertainment system inside the car. So
I see.
games actually make a lot of sense for the backseat passengers.
I have a question that is kind of like not necessarily strictly related to the UX, but it's August 2021. Compose is stable. Can we use Compose on FireOS?
Oh, great question. I've been playing a little bit with Compose, and to be honest with you, I don't see why not. I haven't seen yet a template or an experience built in Compose for Fire TV, but that's actually a very good prompt, Seb. I'll pick it up on the challenge. I think so. I don't see why not. I think like the interesting bit would be like how do you take all these learnings from standard UI design for Android and you apply those to Compose. But yeah, I think it should be perfectly doable.
Because I remember back in the day that the only time that I worked on something for Android TV, that you used to use the Leanback library, which I think is still
Mhm.
the preferred way to do that, right? Even on FireOS, it's not bound to Google APIs or anything, so I think it works for Fire TV as well. And
Yes.
I remember it working-ish, but sometimes being a bit of a pain, mostly because, UI on Android. So was my thought was like, oh, maybe now with Compose some things will be easier. And I've just double checked the Compose roadmap, and it doesn't seem like they have written anything about TV. But I don't know. Maybe you folks are going to do something about it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Wink, wink.
that's actually a good idea. I think like yeah, I mean even Leanback, like you said, is and in particular the Leanback based templates. Some are very good starting. Like they can be a good starting point. I have to say, like working with a lot of TV developers, there are a lot of developers which are not using Leanback as
Huh.
well. Like a lot of developers are building custom UI because they don't want to be restrained to the limitations of the Leanback template. So that's why I also don't see a big I see a big opportunity actually with Compose to like you said, maybe to unshackle from some of the limitations of the classic UI design and take a graceful experience on TV to the next level. I think it would be very interesting to see. It's fairly early days for Compose. I'm very interested into it. I'm learning as you guys are as well. But yeah, I would be very curious to see what a great TV experience looks like using some of these new tools. I started playing with Flutter as well to see can we do a very cool TV application using Flutter? And everything is possible. I think it's just a matter of like, are the tools ready? Is everything like? I think that standard Android is now it's like I think what is like 13, 14 years that Android has been around is very well established, and we have very good solid tools for developing, in particular media streaming applications and some other cross-platform languages is also catching up as well, and there are other tools that developers can start using as well. So I think it's a very open field though. Like I love innovation. I love like to see new patterns come up, and at Amazon we try to push the envelope as much as possible for what is a great and graceful experience on our Fire TV devices. But yeah, I would love to see the Android community coming up with a great composed template for TV. That's a great idea.
I'm curious to see what will happen in the space. Really, just
Yeah,
thinking
because
about.
I mean the
Yeah,
Mhm.
go ahead, go ahead.
Please. No, I was thinking about the Min SDK, and we got it because even I mean 22 probably I mean, but let's say we are targeting a couple of versions of FireOS, and we are there with Compose. But the part that is fascinates me the most is that when you need to think about, okay, what's the next button that I gonna select? For me, it feels a lot like putting a lot of care into accessibility. You know, that's the part when I need to work with Talkback on even on an Android app. You need to think about this stuff, because otherwise the tool is gonna start reading from top. You know, it's just gonna read everything. So if you put effort in accessibility, then the UI and UX actually improve. And I see very close to what you will do for a TV, because otherwise, you know, the navigation will be messed up, because you need to be actually sure that if you click on, let's say, D-pad, because now I learned how the thing is named, the cross, yeah, like a savage. Okay, let the D-pad, and then you click on the right. You go to actually the right place. And with Compose, a lot of this stuff is actually mandatory. You know, like the content description, there is a lot of enforcement on the accessibility part. So I like the idea that, you know, these are the details that can simplify the development even for the TVs.
I hate to rain on your parade, Ivan. I just double checked the Compose roadmap. The D-pad support is not there yet. It's in the nearer term roadmap, as far as I can tell. Like, it's in the in focus column, but it's not there yet. So it might be a bit longer before we can properly use Compose.
I think I would be curious to see, even if the D-pad is not properly implemented, which means, yeah, probably the underlying layer that communicates the touch, the click buttons, it's not there. But at the end is like standard Android focus best practices. So
for views, yeah.
I don't know, maybe, yeah, right. So maybe even though if D-pad doesn't work yet, maybe there is a way to emulate that, and see if at least the UI itself actually works. Then when the D-pad support comes in, it will be, you know, smoother, because it just works out of the box. But yeah.
I think it's just going to be a matter of waiting a bit for the next whatever release of Compose 1.1 or whatever that is, which I would expect will bring those things in, also because those things are used for accessibility as well, because telling the focus direction for D-pad is generally used by accessibility as well. So
yeah,
I expect that will be coming fairly soon.
Hopefully. Yeah.
And speaking of that, that might also mean that one day we'll have our applications on systems that require focused navigation, such as desktop. Sorry, I had to ask.
Wink, wink, wink. Yeah. Yeah, why not? I mean, on that, I cannot really share a lot, but yeah, I think, you know, that is one, like, I think for everyone who hasn't caught the the reference, I think the clue. I think I think that Seb is pointing to the upcoming Amazon App Store support for Windows. So yeah, that's a super exciting project. Unfortunately, I cannot share a lot yet. We will have more coming very soon, so stay tuned on that. Speaking of which, I strongly recommend to go and check out developer.amazon.com, which is our developer portal where we'll be sharing all the news about this and all the other projects. So yeah, it's very exciting, because of course bringing Android to desktop is, you know, something that's been on the probably most wanted list for all of us developers for a while. Yeah, it's very exciting, because the idea is to bring, you know, your apps. You will not have to do a lot of work just to bring your applications to Windows, and then your app will run on desktop and be available on, you know, hundreds of millions of devices. So yeah, very, very exciting. In terms of specifics, again, I can't share much, but the idea is that, you know, it should also work with the standard way that Windows manages its Windows internally. So yeah, it would be very interesting to see how developers over time, leverage this new opportunity.
So this sounds like somewhat similar to the experience that has been on Chrome OS for a couple of years, which is like you have the store, you install the apps, and then they run as if they were native on the device. And it's similar to what Apple has also done with iOS apps on Mac, I think.
Correct. Yes. So there will be a way for customers to go search for the apps that they like, they install them, and then hopefully the experience that they will experiment will be of an application that basically runs natively on the device. So there will be a sort of a compatibility layer for Android applications running on Windows, but I would say that the final customer experience should be something that is almost indistinguishable from a native application. So yes, fairly similar to the other two systems that you said, even though the technologies underneath will be fairly different.
You know what excites me a lot is that with that system on Chrome OS, you can use the Chromebook as an emulator in a way, without being an emulator.
Right? Yeah.
And I hope that when these things comes out on Windows, you'll be able to do the same, where you can just run the applications on Windows instead of running them on the emulator, which might be faster. Yeah. I don't know. I'm curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, no, same here. I'm very excited by the new opportunities. I think it will also change the way that we think about building mobile applications in general, right? Like we've always been like, yeah, even TV was one of the few iterations that you could have as a developer. You could have phones, you could have tablets, and you could have TV. And there are not many other places for your apps to be. But now desktop is another big opportunity. So what does it mean to build a mobile application that also runs on desktop? That's a very interesting question to answer. I don't think we have the answer yet. I think as soon as these and other similar technologies will be available, more and more developers will start to see creating application as a more fluid experience than it used to be maybe when we all started building Android applications on phones like 10, 12 years ago.
And I think one of the biggest wins we have is that like all these platforms, they are not entirely separate. There are overlaps between each other. And like properly supporting one of these platforms might get you a big chunk of work already done to support another one. Say supporting D-pad for an application that is meant to run in a car or on the TV will get you that stuff for free when you run it on Windows, for example, or when you run it on Chrome OS for that matter. So I think it's given people more and more incentive to not stop at the basic, oh, this is going to run on a phone.
The phone. Yeah.
No, I 100% agree. I think at the end is like, we always get back to why are there best practices for when you create an application. Sometimes as developers, we think of best practices as limitations, or like they tell me to do it this way, but for me it's faster to do it this other way. I'll just do it this other way. But at the end, if you follow, best practices, if you, like in this case, for example, focus on mobile application is a best practices, which is not really followed by a lot of developers. But if we all did, then porting your application from mobile to TV or to desktop or to other, type of screens might become a much easier experience than if you've done it in the first place. So I think it's about, also how itself these guidelines can evolve to support the fact that we now live in a multi-screen world, and the fact that as developers we need to support these multiple form factors, which is very interesting.
I just realized that we are way over time, as always when we start talking about shit.
because this is interesting. Come on, this is so cool.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, and we all care about. So that's kind of bound to happen. But yeah, thank you, Mario. It's been super interesting as always talking with you, and
No, thank you.
hope to see
Thank
you
you, guys.
soon.
Yeah,
We need to go get a pizza together.
absolutely. We need to go to get a slice together, right?
See what they did there.
So
Awesome, guys. No,
thank you.
thank you very much for having me. And it's always lovely to speak with you. Bravi ragazzi.
Thanks. And yeah, I mean, is it the last episode or we are back on live?
It's the last
Okay,
episode.
okay.
People will have seen the live episode on Wednesday with Leland, and then we will be back on. I need to check the calendar. We're not recording on the day, so that makes it super hard. We're back on the 25th, if I recall correctly. We should have Mark back, but I don't know.
Okay.
It's 3 weeks from
Scheduling is
now. Bye.
You will know by the time.
Yeah,
Ciao, have a nice evening.
we'll have the
Thank you,
proper
Mario.
we'll have the proper date at the end of, like, now after the end of the recording. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for
Thank you,
watching
guys.
this. Don't forget to subscribe if you use Prime to our Twitch channel. And if you're watching on YouTube, then also subscribe. Bye.
You can subscribe.
Thank you. Even you're
Ciao.
much better at this than I am.